acknowledge and accept whatever your situation is. Acknowledging that and saying, okay, this is the reality of what I'm experiencing right now. And then two, immediately identifying what you need. And then once you identify what you need, then the next step is to figure out what that resolution is to what you need.
Well, hey, welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And today I am joined by Coach NiaRenee, and she is a certified narcissistic abuse relationship recovery coach, leadership training, and empathy powerhouse behind the dragonfly effect in leadership. She helps survivors rebuild self-trust while guiding leaders and organizations in strengthening empathy, emotional intelligence, and human-centered culture. As a survivor of childhood trauma, workplace trauma, and 6 brain surgeries, NiaRenee brings a deeply human, trauma-informed lens to both healing and leadership development. Through her Battered Hearts Rising Blueprint and her Dragonfly Leadership Framework, she teaches individuals and companies how to transform awareness into aligned action. Whether she's coaching survivors, training emerging leaders, or speaking on radical self-trust, NiaRenee creates spaces where people feel seen, understood, and empowered to rise into their highest potential. Oh my gosh, Coach, welcome to the show. Such an honor
Thank
to
you for
have you here.
having me. I'm like hyped up by my own introduction. I'm like, yeah, that's right.
That, my friend, is how you know you did it right?
Yes.
Is if you hear it and you're like proud, that's
Yes,
awesome.
I am so proud. I'm like over here like, okay, yes, yeah. Not as if I didn't write it, right?
Well, it's so funny, just hanging out on the whole bio thing. I actually think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of entrepreneurs really face is just owning their authority, their space, the right to speak to a subject. I know personally, I'm actually revisiting the bio pretty often, with updates and revisions and tweaks and all of that. So yeah, that's real.
Yeah, it's real, and it's something that I think when you work on it, because you want to get it right. You want to get it right, and you want to make sure that people know who you are and what you do and what you stand for. So bio has to be very, very strong. So yeah, I'm always tweaking it and I'm always making sure it's delivering the right message, especially because I have the intersectionality between toxic relationships and toxic workplaces. I want to make sure that everything that I do aligns on the same playing field as what I'm doing. And so that's been a challenge. Mind you, that's been a challenge, but we've made it.
I love it. Yeah, like that's very powerful to have arrived there and gotten that clarity. I am actually really curious. What is it about that intersection that lights you up, of supporting both of those conversations and living in that space?
I think it's my experience. It's the experience that I had in my personal life, and then realizing that the parallels were also in my professional life. And when I was in corporate America, wanting to be a leader, that I was an emerging leader that wanted to change the landscape of the culture of what was going on in corporate America. The meanness that gets labeled as direct, the lack of empathy for your coworkers and your teammates, and leaders not having the ability to have that compassion and lead with that strength is what fueled me, because I was that leader, but I was that leader that also wasn't receiving that care that I needed. And that empathy that I needed, while, like you said, a 6-time brain surgery survivor. I had 5 brain surgeries in 1 year, and that was inconvenient for them. Yeah, I'm going to let that pause for a second.
Obviously. How dare you do that?
Yeah, how dare I? You know what I mean? And it became an inconvenience for them. And it was like, not once did someone ask me, "Are you okay?"
Not even once.
Not even once. Not even once. I was missing and nobody cared. It was just the view that I just was not at work and I didn't want to work. That's how people viewed me.
Mm.
And it was very frustrating because my work ethic spoke for itself. And even my leaders would say, you're incredible. You're amazing at what you do when you're here. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys want me to do. I have a condition that came out of nowhere. That was a condition that mimics having a brain tumor that doesn't actually exist. And I needed to have those 5 brain surgeries. I had a mock stroke, and I'm sitting in not a mock stroke, but I had a TIA, a trans-ischemic attack. And half of my body is frozen. And I'm in a meeting trying not to panic because I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my job because I'm having a medical emergency that required 3 more brain surgeries on top of the 2 that I already had just had. And so I get that we need the workforce to continue to move. Obviously, things continue to flow and continue to move. But my lack of support that I received during that, and then being moved out of my position and then put into a position that wasn't the same level of what I was doing, and everybody knew, and eventually it led to my layoff. And so that's what fuels me. It just fuels that fire in me, that frustration, because there's so many of us out there. There's leaders that want to lead from a different place. They want to lead. They want to change the culture that they're experiencing, but they're afraid to do it. And empathy is something that needs to be talked about more because we have a lack of it. We are missing it. There is no empathy in this world right now.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm sorry that happened, like that's not how human beings really ought to interact. And, you're so right. We're in such a weird time of isolation and fixation on like the problems and the challenges of the day, which are so super real. But the way that we're choosing to engage those challenges is to distract or to numb or to withdraw or to consult AI as opposed to each other. And as a coach who is helping so many coaches get their businesses off the ground, I see it all the time. I'm like, you don't need a following, you need to say hello.
Yeah.
And
you need to be human centered.
Is really like, it's behaviors, right? Like,
yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit? You said something so interesting. You said confusing meanness for directness.
Yes.
Do you mind expanding on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would love to.
And they like pride themselves on being super direct. Like, what is the difference? How do you know that you are being direct versus mean?
Absolutely. There is a difference in saying, hey, this is my boundary, or this is my line, or hey, this is what I said I was going to do. I'm going to do it this way. And that's what I said I was going to do on this project, versus you don't get to tell me what to do. You're not my boss. You're that type of, there's a difference. You know what I mean? There's a difference when how you speak to people. And when I was in corporate America, if I was direct, I was being too emotional. But when other team members were being direct, that's just their personality. And so that became such a frustration for me, because I was like, I'm just being direct in the same way that my coworkers are doing it, and I'm the one that's being harped on about it. And that's where it's frustrating, because it's like, okay, I'm being direct and saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing it. That's not me being too emotional. That's me letting you know up front, like, this is what this is going to look like, and this is how this is going to go. This is how I'm presenting this. That's not me being mean. Now, other coworkers would be like, no, do it because I said that's how you do it. You do it because I told you to do it. That's them being direct. No, that's you being mean, and that's a dictatorship.
Yeah.
So we get into these places.
What you're describing, that strikes me as being very emotional. Some of the emotional
exactly
words forward for me are like, they're frustrated, they're disappointed, they're angry, they're anxious, perhaps, like,
but also,
not feeling like
what's the
control.
problem with having emotion? What's the problem with being emotional?
Really good question. What is the problem?
What is the problem with being emotional? We are taught so much in our lives that we have to be one of two ways. We either have to be happy and happy, or angry. There's no in between. And it's like, why aren't we allowed to feel the other emotions that arise if we're disappointed because we did on a project, or we're feeling down because our performance review didn't go the way that we wanted to, and we want to express our feelings around why we are a little bit hurt by the words that were said to us in our performance review, knowing we just slaved this whole entire year going through many challenges and facing the things that we did, and yet I'm still met with certain descriptors. Why shouldn't I be allowed to express why what those feelings come with? Like, I've had performance reviews where I worked through the COVID pandemic as someone who is immune compromised, right? I worked through the COVID pandemic. I was traveling from Colorado to DC 3 times a week at one point. And at the end of that, my performance review was, well, you've neglected some of your other job duties. I just busted can I cuss on here?
Yeah, patooties, great. Yeah,
okay.
no, but I hear you.
I just busted my ass for that company for a year straight. And then I'm being told that I neglected some of my other job duties because I was asked by the company, by the program, to be the focal point of traveling, because I was the one that was organizing the travel, getting the travel documents, and I worked as a subcontractor to the largest defense subcontractor. I won't name the name, but I worked for the largest subcontractor to the Department of Defense. And so I was doing things back and forth between the government and the company. And I became the one that was able to travel because we were so bare bones because of the pandemic. And well, you were neglecting some of your job duties. Nothing was said about all the other things that I did, the groundbreaking work that I did, the programs that program that we won because of the work that I was doing, the relationships that I had built with top officials. None of that was recognized. And so, why am I not allowed to feel emotions around that? Because you guys aren't building people up. You're breaking them down piece by piece, and then wondering why your retention is low. You're wondering why the burnout is high. You're wondering why employees don't feel seen or heard. You're wondering why your employees are slacking off or not paying attention, or their work output is decreasing because you're not pouring into them in positive ways. What is wrong with that? I don't see what's wrong with that. Just because you're compassionate and empathetic for your employees, it doesn't make you a soft person. It doesn't make you someone who is weak. It actually makes you a stronger human being to simply say, this person is going through something right now, or this person is feeling something right now, that I need to understand their perspective more so that we can collaborate and be better as a team. That's why like, I could talk about this all day. You see how passionate I am about it,
really
because I lived it.
Absolutely. And I mean, knowing what you know now, and you've become a coach, so you've learned even more about these situations and complications that come up. So, like, let's just imagine you were working with somebody who, was having similar experiences, very underappreciated, trying to do all of the things, feeling like you can never ever make the supervisor happy or the leader happy. And then themselves just feeling like they're getting caught into that downward spiral. It happens so much, and I totally agree with you. Like, it happens far, far more than, like, we're not talking about this being like an isolated small percentage of the pie of the work experience in large organizations. This is the standard. This is normal.
Yes.
This is common. It is extraordinary for an organization to have a culture of, empathy, of, I'm a big supporter of mothers and making sure that families are supported by supporting the mother. And, like, one of the things that was super devastating in my career was getting married and having kids. And that, because then, again, it's like, I think of empathy as, yes, having that space to consider and observe the feelings that others are having and hold that space and respond to that. And also, like, a curiosity, of just like, well, where are you at? What are your priorities? Because like
Right.
it seems like, it feels like people don't want to ask those questions because they're scared of being drugged down, or they're scared of creating like an HR issue, or
Yeah.
there's so
That's the
much
big one. They're scared of
anxiety,
creating an HR issue, and they're so afraid of stepping over the lines of what an HR person does, and it's just simply asking you to care.
That's it.
That's all we're asking is
Taking
for
human
is
interest.
human leadership first. Leading
Hmm.
from a human place. And I understand people are like, well, I get compassion fatigue. Well, we'll work through that. We'll work through the compassion fatigue. Yes, there is a line that you don't cross over. And if there are words you're starting to hear, then yes, that goes into the HR realm. But being robotic, being dismissive,
Cold and isolated.
being cold and isolated, saying that you have an open door policy, but that door's barely cracked open, and you're always on the phone with and you're an intimidating person, and you never want anybody to actually enter your office. That's not the type of leadership we need, especially if we look at Gen Z's not having it. Gen Z is not having it. And those are the leaders that I want to work with. I want to work with the leaders that want to break out of that norm, that want to break out of that toxic where people just are just so isolated. It's like just do you know how much you could change someone's life by simply saying, Amanda, what do you need in the workplace that will help you feel like you have that space to be a better team collaborator? Or simply asking, are you okay? Do you need an ear? Is there something deeper going on that you need to discuss? Do you know how much that could change someone's whole? If someone simply, and I'm writing a book right now and I'm talking about this, if somebody simply would have just been like, NiaRenee, are you okay? I would have felt so valued in the workplace, because I'm in the hospital, right? I'm in the hospital and I'm still answering emails. I'm still answering text messages and getting phone calls from people asking me questions when I have already laid out everything that you need. I had contingency plans in place for you to find I had an Excel spreadsheet that was coordinated and had links to the specific files of everything that everyone needed, so they knew what to do when I was out of office. I set that up for a reason. I'm still getting text messages. My husband had to take my business cell phone away from me and turn it off. He said, you are in the hospital. We don't know what's going on with you. You're losing your vision and you're worried about answering a work message? Absolutely not. And he took my phone and he turned it off. And I had to tell my boss that. And she was like, well, I mean, they shouldn't be reaching out to you when you're on medical leave. And so this all could be avoided if you simply said, NiaRenee is going to be out of the office for a little while. She is dealing with some things. And if you want to reach out to her to come to provide her some comfort and check on her, she would really appreciate that. That's what my previous manager did before I transferred out here to Texas. That's what my previous leadership did when I had my first brain surgery. Because mind you, I've had 6. I had 1 brain surgery, and then 2 years later, I had 5 more. But it's just it's that one leader that set the bar and standard so high for everyone else, and that's the leader that I strive to be, and I continue to be that way, because all it takes is for one person to see you. If I felt seen, my productivity would have skyrocketed. And I'm not saying my productivity was low, right? Like, I give it my all. I give everything that I have. People's productivity skyrocket when you value them as a human being first.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that comes up for me too about, on leadership and all that, so often people wait until it is a really dire circumstance. Somebody's not showing up to work, or the performance has gotten so out of hand on, being delayed in something, and then they ask. And one of my big secrets, and I'm curious what yours might be or your recommendation might be to a leader or even somebody who's in the shoes of like feeling very overwhelmed because they don't have the support that they need in that moment. But something that came up for me is that it's easy to ask if you're okay if you have a pre-existing relationship. Right. So it could be as simple as like, what's your favorite thing that happened this weekend? First thing on Monday before you jump to it. Or, just taking a personal interest in the person and, you can weave it into meetings. You can be like, okay, pineapple on pizza, yes or no? And like that sort of thing. It
Yeah,
sounds so
icebreakers.
silly and ridiculous, right? But our relationships depend on those little connections and disconnections, when we're calibrating whether we want to be friends with someone, we're so often thinking like, well, I like all these things that are the same, and we're a little different here, but I actually like that too. And like that's where the actual relationship can be, that when the drama comes, not
When,
if,
because, yeah, because it
when.
comes. Yeah.
Right? Because life, right? We're doing all of this in the context of life. When the drama comes, the thing that rescues the relationship is not, did you say the right thing in the emergency. It more so is, do I trust you, right? Because if,
Right.
if if somebody asks like, what do you need, and there's a low trust, they won't
Mm,
say anything,
right.
right? But if there's been a history together, even if it is silly stuff like whether you like pineapple on pizza or what you love in your coffee, or just like those little things, it makes such a big difference. But I want to hear your perspective on this. Like, someone finds themselves in this situation,
Hmm.
that they're not getting what they need out of the workplace, out of their leadership, and they are facing real life. Like, what would
Hmm.
you say are the main three things they need to do?
I think the first thing is to acknowledge and accept whatever your situation is. Acknowledging that and saying, okay, this is the reality of what I'm experiencing right now, and then to immediately identifying what you need. And then once you identify what you need, then the next step is to figure out what that resolution is to what you need. Now, when you apply that into the workforce and you have a leader that you are not really at the best place with, I think it comes with being willing to open the door yourself. Sometimes we get
That's so good.
stuck in these places where we're too afraid to knock on the door. We're too
Mhm.
afraid to send that note. We're too afraid to pick up the phone and have the conversation or stop by the office. Um, 10 times out of 10, we have to speak up for ourselves, and it comes to advocating for ourselves. And that's
Right.
scary because we don't know what's going to come on the other side. But if
Yeah.
you break it down with, okay, we'll use my brain surgery stuff for example. When I interviewed, I led with, I have a brain condition, and God forbid something could happen where I might something where it needs to be addressed. And when I interviewed for that position, things were great. I was doing fine. I didn't have nothing was happening, but the unforeseeable did happen. So I had to take a step back and I had to acknowledge, okay, I'm in this space again where my health is directly affecting every single thing around me. I'm losing my vision. I'm I'm constantly throwing up. I'm dizzy all of the time. This is life threatening. I need to take a step back. Okay, what do I need? Okay, I need the space to step back, and I need the opportunity to evaluate what is my next step. So then we get to the third thing of achieving that, going to my boss and saying, hey, this unforeseen thing is happening, and I'm going to need to take some time off to figure out what's happening because I don't know what's going on, but I do know that I'm very sick. And that was the scariest thing in my life to do because I was new ish in that position. I hadn't reached a year yet, I don't think.
Mm.
And I just was experiencing something that nobody foresaw this happening. In fact,
No, but
I
I mean,
thought,
like, that's what life is.
yeah, we
Some
don't
things maybe
foresee
are a
these
little bit
things
planned,
happening.
like getting married or changing, making changes because you chose the change. But so many
Right,
things change in our lives because we didn't choose the change, right? The
right,
change chose us.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, the change definitely chose us, and a lot of us are adverse to change, right? A lot of
Oh,
us
yeah.
don't like change and we're afraid of change, and I think that's a lot of the big part of the cultural issues in workplace dynamics is because we're too afraid of change. And it's like we have to get out of that in order to advocate for ourselves and our needs, in order to advocate for our team members, in order to advocate as a leader. You have to have a level of self awareness to be able to step outside of whatever is happening to advocate for what you need. And that's what makes a leader is being able to advocate for your other team members. It's being able to go to a team member and say, hey, I noticed you're struggling recently. Your work output isn't at its normal rate. And so I don't want this to be where we take this as a bad thing. I want this to be a teaching moment, but I also want to understand what's going on to see to see what support you need to be able to help you be a productive team member. Sometimes leaders are too afraid to even do that. It should always be teaching moments.
Well, Coach NiaRenee, thank you so much for being here. What is the best way for people to follow you, maybe find out some more about your coaching, your leadership training?
Yeah. You guys can follow me on Instagram at Coach Nia Renee. That's where my at on basically everything. A lot of my Instagram content is the narcissistic abuse, but I am getting into the leadership, talking about workplace leadership and what that looks like. So stay tuned for that. And I am writing a book on the dragonfly effect, the four wings of leadership, which is vision, strategy, resilience, and empathy. And I'm using that with storytelling of what I experienced in the workplace and how the difference in a leader that showed empathy could have changed the trajectory of my career. And so keep a lookout for that as well.
Amazing, amazing. And dear listener, we have all of Coach NiaRenee's links in the show notes below. Do make sure you stop by to give her a follow. And don't forget to hit subscribe because you don't want to miss another episode. You know, this conversation is a really important one, and I'm sure you've got a few friends who are maybe at a crossroads in their career or have been struggling lately, and they need to hear that they're not alone. So grab the link to this show and you can send it to them however you guys like to connect, over text or DM, however you do that. And finally, if you're loving the Amanda Kaufman Show, make sure you take a moment to leave us a honest review because those reviews help people decide whether they want to choose us among all of the different options there are for podcasts out there. We're going to be back with another episode super soon, but until then, make sure you do what matters.